If you're in a clutch, you need to experience the servant's touch.
Welcome to the ServantCast, where leadership is not measured by position, popularity, or platform, but by purpose, people, and impact. I am Mo Buford, and today we're tackling one of the most debated words in sports culture: GOAT, the greatest of all time. Usually, the debate centers on rings, records, revenue, and recognition. But today, we're going to ask a different question. What if greatness isn't about what you and I have accumulated, but rather who we have lifted? This episode is called The Servant GOAT, football's greatest example of servant leadership. Now, these men didn't just win games, they served teammates, uplifted communities, and modeled humility when the lights were the brightest. Now, I don't want you to watch this servant cast passively. Nope, go grab a pen, some paper, and I challenge you to think honestly about the upcoming traits of our conversation and ask yourself this hard question. Would others, not ourselves, would others crown you the GOAT, greatest of all time, or the solo, self-obsessed, others last operator in your industry? Got that? Are you ready? Let's go and redefine greatness. Servant GOAT number one, Walter Payton. Walter Payton. They called him Sweetness, but the name didn't come from the game being easy. Nope, that's not the case. Walter Payton was the most electrifying players the NFL has ever seen, bar none. Yet, his teammates will tell you his greatness showed up when the ball wasn't in his hands. There's a story from practice where Payton, already a superstar, was lining up at running back. Instead of jogging through the play, he exploded into a block for a teammate and knocked the defender flat. Now, the coach later asked him, "Why'd you go so hard when the play wasn't even designed for you?" Listen to what Sweetness said. He said, "That's my teammate. If he eats, we all eat." Wow. That was Walter Payton. He ran just as hard to block as he did to score. He practiced like a rookie even after becoming a legend. He gave without cameras, served without applause, and led without an ego. Payton once said, "Never die easy." But what he really showed us was this servant cast principle. Write this down. Greatness isn't proven by how often we are celebrated, but how consistently we serve. Wow. Now, that's why today, the NFL's highest honor for character and community impact bears his name. Not because he was the loudest, not because he demanded attention, but because he made everyone around him better. What about us? That's not just football greatness, my friend. That's servant leadership. Servant GOAT number two, Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald. Now, Larry Fitzgerald was one of the most talented wide receivers to ever play the game. But if you asked his teammates what defined him, they wouldn't start with catches or touchdowns. Nope. They'll talk about how he blocked. It's almost like an oxymoron. There were countless plays where Fitzgerald sprinted downfield not to score, but to clear a path for someone else. Linebackers, safeties, it didn't matter. He threw his body into the work so another teammate could shine. Wow. Here's what makes that remarkable, at least to me. He didn't have to, because he was already a star. Yet, Fitzgerald believed something deeper. Catch this ServantCast principle. Leadership means doing the uncelebrated work with excellence when no one else is watching. There's a stat that still stops people cold in their place. Larry Fitzgerald finished his career with more tackles than dropped passes. Think about that. It really speaks to preparation. It speaks to humility. It speaks to, my friend, accountability. Now, off the field, Fitzgerald quietly poured time and resources into education and community development, rarely calling attention to it. The left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. That's the type of leader that he was. No self-promotion, no spotlight chasing. When asked about leadership, Fitzgerald once said, "Leadership is about how you make people feel, especially when things aren't going well." Wow. That's servant leadership, my friend. Because real influence doesn't come from demanding attention. It comes from earning trust. Let that sink in. Larry Fitzgerald showed us that greatness isn't just about what you catch. It's about who you and I cover. And that's why his legacy will last long after the stats have faded. Servant GOAT number 3. Servant GOAT number 3. Drew Brees. When Brees arrived at New Orleans, the city was hurting. Hurricane Katrina had left neighborhoods broken, families displaced, and hope in short. The Saints hadn't just lost games, they had lost some belief. Brees could have come in as a savior. Nope. Instead, he came in with a towel and as a servant. He started with the locker room. Brees learned names. He listened before he led. He stayed late to throw extra routes, not for stats, but for trust. On Sundays, my friend, he commanded the huddle. But Monday through Saturday, he served the huddle. Off the field, Brees and his family invested deeply in rebuilding schools, supporting youth programs, and restoring community spaces, often quiet without any headlines. He once said this: "The legacy I want is one where people say I helped them become better." Now, that mindset shaped everything. Under his leadership, the Saints didn't just win a Super Bowl, they became a symbol of resilience for the entire city. Drew Brees reminds us of the power of this ServantCast truth. The greatest leaders don't just change outcomes, they restore hope. And when leadership restores hope, it becomes bigger than football. That's the mark, the real mark of a servant leader. Servant goat number 4, Reggie White. They called him the Minister of Defense. Not just because he dominated offensive linemen, but because he never separated his faith from his leadership, his belief from his conviction. Reggie White was one of the most feared defenders in NFL history. Yet inside the locker room, teammates described him as a teacher, a mentor, and an encourager. There's a story often told about White pulling young players aside, not to critique their play, but to check on their lives. He prayed with them. He listened to them. He challenged them to become better men, not just better athletes. White believed in this servant principle, that strength without character is incomplete. At a time when speaking openly about faith could cost endorsements and popularity, Reggie stood firm, but never arrogant. He led with conviction and humility, showing that servant leadership requires both courage and compassion. Courage and compassion. He once said, "You don't lead people by yelling at them. You lead them by loving them." Wow. That philosophy showed up everywhere. In how he respected coaches, how he uplifted teammates, and how he used his platform to advocate for unity and justice. Reggie White reminds us that true power isn't proven by who you overpower, but by who you and I uplift. And when leadership is rooted in service, it leaves an eternal imprint far beyond the field. That's servant leadership. Servant goat number 5, Kurt Warner. Before the stadium lights, before the MVP trophies, before the Super Bowl rings, Kurt Warner was stocking shelves in a grocery store. I can personally relate to that as a former part-time stockman at Publix. Every night after practice in an arena league, he put on a different uniform, one with a name tag, and do the work that no one applauded. That season of obscurity shaped him, for he knew that we should not despise the day of small beginnings. Now, when Warner finally got his shot in the NFL, he didn't arrive entitled. He arrived grateful and hungry. As a quarterback, Warner led with humility. He listened to his teammates. He elevated others in the huddle. He never forgot what it felt like to be overlooked. There's a moment teammates often recall. Listen to this. Even at the height of his success, Warner made a point to acknowledge the linemen, the trainers, and the staff, the people whose names never made the headlines. Now, what about us? How do we treat the unseen, the unknown, and that person without power? Now, off the field, he and his wife devoted themselves to serving children with special needs and families facing adversity, quietly, consistently, and without the spotlight. Warner once said, listen to this, you don't know how God is preparing you until you look back. Once again, you don't know how God is preparing you until you look back. His story reminds us of this timeless ServantCast principle. Catch this. Servant leaders don't despise humble beginnings. They are formed by them. Kurt Warner shows us that greatness isn't about how fast you rise. It's about how faithful you serve once you get there. That, my friend, is the heart of servant leadership. Now, here's the common thread. None of these men chased greatness. They chased impact. They didn't ask, what do I get? They asked, how can I help? And that's the servant goat mindset. So maybe this episode stirred something within you. If you are a leader, a coach, a veteran, an executive, or an influencer who wants to lead with clarity, character, and conviction, I invite you to send me a note in the link below and learn how to become the servant goat of your industry with confidential coaching, leadership development, disinformed growth, servant leadership frameworks. We specialize in helping leaders move from position to purpose, from success to significance. Because greatness, true greatness, isn't about how many follow you. It's about who becomes better because of you. I am Mo Buford, and it's time